Hi, and welcome to the Happiest Hour. I'm Paula Devine. Today, I am joined by my friend Allie Clark from the Sober Dream Team. Allie and I met in the Lighthouse Coaching Academy, hosted by Jen Hurst. She is incredibly thoughtful, smart, and always just so much fun to catch up with. You're just such a breath of fresh air, Allie. And she's doing some really powerful work helping women understand their environment, relationships, and nervous system, and how they all play a role in alcohol use and healing. Allie, I am really excited to dive into some really important topics today. And I'm happy to have you here. How are you?
Paula, thank you for having me. I am wonderful. It's so good to see you. It's so good to be with you. I feel like everything's great now that I get some Paula time.
Oh,
Not too
thank
long.
you. Yeah, I was so looking forward to today, and thank you so much for coming on. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, where you're from, all the things.
Okay, I am Allie Clark. I live just outside of Kansas City. Go Chiefs. And you know what? I've lived in Kansas City most of my life. I love the Midwest. I grew up here. I married a wonderful man named Ben, who I call Sparky. And we both grew up here, and we have these three beautiful children that we're raising in the Midwest. One day, Paul, we might move out of the Midwest and go adventure somewhere bigger than this. But for
Come
now,
on down.
I love Florida. I could live in Florida in a heartbeat. So, or Colorado. But for now, Kansas City is home. And you know what? For the longest time, Paula, I was a stay-at-home mom. Before being a stay-at-home mom, I was a teacher for 6 years. I taught first and second grade, and I loved it. But being a mom and a teacher was really difficult. I just did not have the energy to be with kids all day and then come home to kids. So I decided to be a stay-at-home mom for 16 years. And just a year ago, I stepped into sober coaching. I have been sober since June 23rd, 2017. And
Congratulations.
thank you. I kind of still can't believe it. It's almost 9 years and I'm stunned. I cannot wait to get to double digits. I am so excited. So, but you know what? I am stunned also that I waited as long as I did to step into sober coaching. I recovered pretty quietly for a long time. And at my 7-year anniversary, I just decided to throw something out on my social media page, my personal page. The response was so warm, so kind, so supportive. It started to change the trajectory of my recovery. And of course, you and I met through Jen Hurst Lighthouse Academy, where we were starting our journey as sober coaches. And then I started my Sober Dream Team page, and this has completely changed my recovery. Being a coach and being able to share my experience openly, honestly, vulnerably, and to help others at a much bigger level than I was before.
Hmm.
I love it. I mean, you and I were talking right beforehand. I just feel like I could fly when I get to help another woman in her sobriety. The days that are, we're just chucking away at this behind the scenes can be a bit hard at times, but it's all worth it when we get to do this work with women who want to go alcohol free and see what the world might be like without a drink in their hand.
I love it. That's amazing. So, you and I have not caught up in a few months, and you've been on quite a journey and diving a little bit deeper into your coaching and your credentials, education. I saw that you were recently on a retreat, and you bring such an interesting perspective to the sobriety conversation in general, focusing on something that so many women experience, dealing with narcissistic relationship dynamics, nervous system regulation, and the challenges of motherhood and recovery. So, what first led you into the work that you're doing now?
So this is very personal work to me. When I started the coaching, I just, first of all, I was so excited that people wanted to work with me, and it was just about sobriety, which was awesome. And I actually had an experience through one of my kids where they were in a relationship with some of these dynamics at play. And I hit somewhat of an emotional bottom as a mother because I grew up in narcissistic relationship dynamics. My mom was a narcissist. And for anybody who has experienced narcissism, I feel like you will completely understand when I say it is psychological warfare. If you haven't experienced narcissism, I 10 out of 10 don't recommend. My Yelp review is 0 stars. It's awful. The dynamics are extremely confusing. They're disorienting. The relationships are all about power over and power and control. And I didn't really speak out about my own experience in narcissistic dynamics for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't have the nervous system capacity for a long time to feel safe enough to do that. But two, when you've been in narcissistic relationship dynamics, you are conditioned to stay silent. So I did a lot of nervous system work and I did a lot of trauma therapy and my own personal work on my relationship with my mother, but I still stayed quiet. And it was when my son went through a really tough relationship that I hit this bottom and I thought, I need to talk about it. I need to get out there. I think my experience can help others. And I also need to speak out for the sake of my kids. I don't want them to ever feel small and stuck in these dynamics. I want to help them know that there is a way to orient yourself in relationships to where you can essentially become unexploitable. But there's work to do to get to that point. Paula, remember, I used to teach first and second grade. So, when I did that, it was always be kind to one another, you always want to be nice and things like that. Well, in these relationship dynamics, that's the worst advice possible. We are not going to be kind. We are not going to be nice. We're actually going to be totally emotionally unavailable and detached.
Oh.
And that is a wildly different skill set. I just didn't know and didn't really understand that my teenagers, I have 3 teenagers, would be experiencing this in their relationship.
Wow.
I just
So
kind of
young.
thought this was adults, right?
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I have so many questions about this topic of narcissistic relationships. But before we get into that, I want to hear if you could tell us a little bit about your story and what your drinking was like, what happened, what it's like now in motherhood, how you got sober. So if you could just kind of give us like a little backstory, and then I want to dive more into the narcissistic topic.
Got it. So my drinking, really good girl. All through high school, I drank a tiny bit, not much. In college, same. Because of these narcissistic relationship dynamics in my house, the family's reputation was super important. So I never wanted to get in trouble. And by the way, also, you always had to look good physically, but on paper too. So it just was never going to look good if I was a hot mess express. I was a super high achiever, a really good girl. I did not really start drinking much until I was a mom. I thought for sure that I drank because motherhood was hard. That was the story I told myself for the longest time. When I became a mother, my stress level increased, so I drank. Well, the truth is, when I became a mother, it triggered a ton of my childhood trauma. I actually have complex PTSD from growing up in these narcissistic relationship dynamics. And I was self-soothing the CPTSD symptoms with wine. But because the mommy wine culture is just so prevalent, it became this very natural and normal escape that I could connect to motherhood. And so, Paul, I drank more than normal after my first child was born. And then my second child was born, and I drank more with that child, right? 2 kids. So 2 glasses of wine every night.
Yeah.
And then by the time I had my third kiddo, it was not only was I drinking every night, but, often 3 or more glasses of wine every single night. And I did
And
that. So go ahead.
at this point, you're drinking regularly, or is anyone pulling you aside or saying, hey, you might want to slow down on your drinking? Or did it look very normal, social?
Totally normal.
Mhm.
Nobody thought a thing about it. And my husband and I drank together every night. We didn't think it was abnormal. We both grew up where, nightly drinking just wasn't a big deal. And so we were just doing what we knew. But at 2.5 years, the wine wasn't really giving me the relief from the stress of motherhood, which was really my CPTSD. And I went and saw a psychiatrist. He put me on some medication and he gave me a prescription for Xanax. And he told me, you can take this 3 times a day and you cannot get addicted for 2 full months. Now, Paula, that is a prescription for addiction. I didn't know any better, although I am very educated. I am very smart, but I knew nothing about benzos. They are so highly addictive. He also said, just don't drink too much. To me, drinking too much is throwing up. I'm like, no problem. I never drink to where I'm throwing up. So I went home that first night and I took my Xanax with a glass of wine. I felt like $1,000,000.
I bet.
So I continued drinking every night and taking Xanax with it for 2.5 years. And it was an absolute and total nightmare.
Wow.
And all during that, the stress of motherhood increased as my kids grew up a little bit and we got into school, but it also increased because of the consequences of my drinking. But I couldn't separate the two. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I just thought motherhood's so stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I ended up hitting a bottom in June of 2017. And I was, very long story short, hiding boxed wine in my closet. And I was at this point where I did not feel like I could keep drinking and using Xanax the way I was, but I also didn't think I could stop.
Mhm.
I didn't think I could face, the reality of my childhood. A lot of that trauma was just right there. And I honestly crawled into bed and tried to drink myself to death. And I was wildly unsuccessful.
Mm.
My husband found my boxed wine hidden in the closet because I hid it on the top shelf and he is 6'7". So it was not difficult for him to find. He ended up having a, just one man intervention and told me if I took one more drink or pill, he'd take the kid to the police. That was the
Wow.
best thing he could have done. He was so courageous to do that. He was so bold and brave, and he was firm. And I did agree to go to detox locally in Kansas City. And then I went to rehab in Colorado at Harmony Foundation. It's now called Harmony Recovery. And I've been sober ever since, which I feel like is not always the normal path.
No.
Many times there's slips after it. But I've been able to maintain sobriety. And he was so firm
Mhm.
about enough is enough for our kid
Yeah.
that really helped me just never look back once I got
Were you
sober.
scared? What kinds of fears did you have about it?
I really didn't know if I could live without alcohol.
Mhm.
I did not know that I could face the reality of the childhood that I grew up in. But the other piece, Paula, is I didn't know if I could, and again, I didn't have the awareness at the time. I didn't know if I could handle the sensations in my body.
Mm.
I was so dysregulated in my nervous system and it was so uncomfortable.
So that was the hardest part. And how did you work through those feelings?
I ended up at about 2.5 years. I started off in a 12-step program and I shared at a meeting about something and a friend stopped me after and he said, I've heard your story so many times, but I never understood really why you drank. I didn't know you had PTSD. I looked at him and I said, I don't. He goes, oh, well, you might. And he gave me the name of a trauma therapist. And I thought,
Oh.
what the heck? I'll just give her a call and we'll check things out. And she told me, you don't have PTSD. You have complex PTSD from this ongoing trauma in your childhood that you couldn't escape.
Mhm.
And we started with internal family systems, cognitive behavioral therapy, and somatic experiencing. And that combination brought me so much relief in my body that
Mm.
I finally felt really good without
Mhm.
alcohol. I mean, I felt better in those 2.5 years without alcohol and Xanax in my system, but I still didn't feel great.
Yeah. And how did you work through those times when you were really uncomfortable?
So before doing the trauma therapy or after?
After treatment, now you're working with a therapist. So when you were having nights or even, when you were having evenings or, it's a beautiful day out. It's perfect drinking weather. How did you work through those times when you were uncomfortable?
Nervous system work, somatic work, so body-based exercises. So much of what I did initially in my sobriety was this top-down method. Let me learn about it. Let me talk about it. And the work I did with my trauma therapist was very much body-based. Let's feel the sensation. Let's titrate. Let's pendulate.
Mm.
And then let's move the activation through your body and let it discharge, which nobody had taught me before. I always was using alcohol and Xanax to try to totally disconnect from my body. And it worked. However, it caused so many problems. You know what's crazy? I want to be in my body as much as possible now
Mm.
because your body reads the room before your brain does. And I want that body wisdom and I want that awareness so
Mhm.
that I can find safe relationships today.
Yeah, absolutely. So that really ties into what I was thinking about. So I'm going to kind of jump ahead to the narcissism topic again because I have not. I'm one of the Yelp reviewers that I have not been in contact with any. I'm sure I have come across people with narcissistic behaviors. I just, especially in sobriety, we're so in tune because not only the clarity, but I just our nervous systems and being aware of our surroundings. I guess maybe I don't see people like that or I don't give people like that the time of day. So tell me a little bit more about how to identify someone with those traits. What should people be looking for?
So this is so interesting, Paula, and a lot of it depends on your past experience. If for you who hasn't been, deeply involved in these narcissistic relationship dynamics, you're not going to be triggered necessarily the same way as somebody who has been in the dynamics before. For me, it felt like home to be in a narcissistic
Mm.
relationship because that's what I grew up in. Or someone who hasn't been in the relationship, honestly, you might be more aware of the red flags before somebody who has. Because if you've grown up in a healthy dynamic and you come across someone who instantly is pressure testing you, one of the quickest things that someone with narcissistic tendencies will do is push your boundaries.
Mhm.
And they'll do tiny boundary nudges and they're testing you to see how you respond. And if you are really comfortable in your own skin and you're okay to set a boundary and follow through with the consequence almost immediately, you are not an ideal relationship for them.
Mm.
They want someone who is easily exploitable. And that's not a character flaw. I don't want to, say that certain people are just easily used. It's not like that.
Okay.
They are actually pressure testing your nervous system. And how your nervous system is responding is what they're looking for. And they might be looking for someone who, if they cross a boundary verbally, says nothing. They let them be rude and stay in the conversation. They might be looking for someone. This is a huge, huge one of mine that I continue to make progress on, but I work on. They'll question your motives on something. If you defend, justify, over explain your position, they love it
Mm.
because it shows them that you care what they think. It is wild to me. I have a whole list of pressure tests that they use and reflexes that they're looking for. And what I work with for clients is that nervous system response,
Yeah.
allowing a pause to happen so that you don't respond from the nervous system level. You sit with the feeling, which is usually wildly uncomfortable,
Mhm.
and you give yourself enough time to strategize a response that they just have no interest in.
Wow. That is, I mean, to me, that sounds a little twisted and sick.
Thank you. It is. And so this is what I told my teenagers. For so long, I just said, be nice, be kind to everyone, all that.
Mhm.
I now tell them there are certain relationships where you have got to channel your inner dickhead. You just cannot. Like our family motto, it's kind of a joke, but is don't be a dick. However, in these relationships, my kids who are so kind and they're so sweet and they're such good people, I don't want them orienting from that place.
Yeah.
From these relationships, I want them orienting that if somebody else was looking at them from far away, being like, oh, wow, that
Yeah.
guy's kind of a dick.
Yeah.
Good. That's
Right.
what we want in those relationships because that's not what they're looking for. So One of my
Mm,
kids is headed off to college, in about a year and a half. And these are the conversations we're having on a regular basis.
interesting. Yeah. Because when we grew up, it was be nice, or nobody was telling us, hey, go for a walk or call a friend, or, we were not learning those tools because, not any fault to our parents, but they didn't know those tools. My parents were really hardworking and trying to make ends meet and make sure everybody was getting what they needed and you were being a good person and, contributing to society, not go for a walk or, go
No.
flow it out in yoga. Nobody was saying those things.
No.
So I think times are definitely changing with all the awareness, and we're teaching our kids open communication and being aware of people's behaviors and body language. But I want to get to that relating to alcohol because I was speaking with someone yesterday who is newly sober, coming out of a very toxic relationship. And the conversation was really based around being in a narcissistic relationship and how that person was really manipulating them and causing them to drink more. So, do you think some of these women are unknowingly using alcohol to cope with the stress of being in that environment?
Yes.
Yeah.
1000% yes. And to be honest, Paula, for so many women, it is a survival strategy.
Mhm.
So when you are in narcissistic relationship dynamics, the nervous system state that is the safest is freeze because shutdown, you're just less likely to be on the receiving end of who knows what. However, you really are not operating well in life when you're in freeze mode. So you might be safer in this relationship, but that freeze mode is carrying into everything else that you're doing. So your life is smaller. You're stuck in so many ways. And then if you're using alcohol to cope with the feelings that come up in your nervous system in these dynamics, which
Mhm.
I did, that's why I was using White and Xanax. Even though my mom had passed, I was still in other narcissistic relationships. If you're using alcohol on top of that, you're even going to be in more of a freeze state. Alcohol
Mhm.
dysregulates your nervous system.
Mhm.
So, but in some ways, it can keep you safe, is how it feels, because you are not going to try to speak out against the narcissist. You are not going to, end up being in fight mode where you either try to fight back or you try to leave. That can be very dangerous in some of these relationships. So,
Yeah.
what's hard for so many women is to think, how can I get either oriented more safely myself in this relationship? And then how can I be in this relationship without alcohol?
Yeah.
How, is this even possible? And I promise it is. You actually have way more power in your relationships if you are alcohol free.
Yeah.
A narcissist will thrive if you are under the influence. You are way more easily manipulated. So, what I tell my clients from day one is sobriety is your superpower. You are weaker under the influence. That works in their favor.
Wow.
Let's keep your power by keeping alcohol out. The next thing that can happen, if your nervous system becomes more regulated, you again have more power because you have clarity. You can feel what's going on that you don't like. Your body is talking to you and it's telling you, red alert. This is not okay. Red flag. And when you feel that enough times, all of a sudden you start thinking, maybe I do want to do something different. Maybe I have the power to do something different. You start to gain courage to
Yeah.
figure out, how can I operate different?
And
And for
don't
some
you think that
people,
takes time though? I mean, I know for me, just getting even just the clarity to articulate my words and think clearly, that took time. I mean, we're killing our brain cells so much that it I feel like they were kind of like recalculating up there. But not only the clarity and recognizing that, but to gain the strength
Mhm.
and also our confidence, because our confidence has been so torn down by alcohol, because that's exactly what it does. It just slowly just chips away at your confidence. until you get to a point where you're just so low, and finding the courage and the strength to get out of that is the first step, but then to build it to where you're saying. So tell me a little bit about that and the time it takes to get to that point.
I'm so glad you said that because one, it does take time, which can feel frustrating, but it's so worth it. And when you're then in freeze mode, to thaw out is a very slow and steady process. And the foundation needs to be solid sobriety. So that is step one.
Mhm.
I always, with clients, ensure that piece is so stable before stepping into any work around the narcissistic dynamics. And before even the narcissistic dynamics is the nervous system work.
Right. Just
It's that.
removing the alcohol.
Right. Because when you were saying alcohol chips away at your confidence, I could not agree more. So do narcissistic relationship dynamics. So even it's exponential when you have that combo, feeling confident, taking up space, allowing yourself to feel good can feel very threatening when you've been in narcissistic relationship dynamics. So building the capacity is a very slow and steady process. So I now, for the most part, when I work with clients, it's a 12-week minimum. And if you need to start with sobriety, some women come to me sober, and that's a different ballgame. But if you need to start with getting sober, I really recommend 6 months of coaching together because it is truly a slow and steady process. So you don't go back to alcohol. Doing too much of this all at once is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah,
Not good at all.
absolutely. Do narcissistic people that you're talking about, because I know there's different types of narcissism, do they change?
No,
They don't.
no, no. You change how you orient in the relationship.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
there's great options. You can go no contact, which I've done in some. You can go low contact, which I've done in some. I will tell you, in every narcissistic relationship that I have had since I've been sober, my time in those relationships is significantly less. When you are here and clear, these aren't dynamics that you really want to be in.
I love that. Hear and clear.
Here and
That's
clear.
great.
Here and clear.
So tell me a little bit too more about the nervous system part of your work and how someone who is thinking about being sober and how they can start implementing some nervous system tools.
I love this. I could geek out on nervous system stuff all day long. And I work with all my clients on nervous system. So no matter where you are, if you're just getting sober, if you've been sober for a long time, if you're in narcissistic relationship dynamics, or if you're not, nervous system work is amazing. It's so good.
So
For
good.
me, I can share my own personal experience. When I was in these narcissistic relationship dynamics, I was living in functional freeze and using a traffic light of tolerance, which I learned through Caroline Strawson. I did a certification through her. That's like the red zone. That is your brain thinking that you are in a life or death situation. And so that's where I was living most of the day. Every day is my brain thinks red alert, we're in life or death. What I did not know is that to get from this dorsal vagal shutdown, which kept me safe in the narcissism, I actually had to go through fight or flight mode to get back to rest and digest. I couldn't go from shutdown to rest and digest. I had to move this stuck energy out of my body by going through fight or flight mode. So to start with, I always suggest just vagal toning exercises. Chances are, if you've been in narcissistic relationship dynamics or using a lot of alcohol, you need to increase your vagal tone. So your vagal tone might be low. We want to get it higher. Higher vagal tone is going to make us more resilient to stress, which I don't know about you. I was a raw nerve when I was first sober. Everything stressed me out.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So some of my very favorite vagus nerve exercises, and I kind of have a whole routine that I just do now. I implement. I gargle after I brush my teeth, which is so easy. I hum all the time. I do review breathing, which is it feels so good. I took my son to his allergy shot this morning. Well, he drove his own car. I was boo breathing the entire way there. I
Oh
was
my
cracking
God.
myself up. I'm like, this is great. Felt like a million bucks by the time I got there. I listened to bilateral stimulation music. Spending time out in nature is very regulating for your nervous system. I do morning light. These are all things that are toning my vagus nerve and increasing my capacity to manage stress. So that's
Wow.
where I would start. And that's just a few. Again, I have a whole
Yeah,
list
you have a lot of tools. I'm gonna have to
of cold exposure. I'm all about cold exposure.
oh, cold
Yeah. Well,
exposure.
I baths, but I do when I finish my shower, I turn on the cold water for about 30 seconds. That
Okay.
activates your
That's
parasympathetic
something that yeah, that's a great start. That's something we can all do right off the bat.
nerve. And then
I love that.
what happened was I would start to get this activation in my body as I was leaving freeze mode and entering this fight or flight, which is the yellow light on a stoplight. It's kind of slow down. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would be so uncomfortable that sometimes I would just put myself back into freeze mode. Lots of compassion. That's very understandable, but it's building the tolerance and the capacity to handle the activation. So increased heart rate. Your blood pressure might be higher. You might feel this jittery energy when you're in fight or flight. And after being in freeze mode for so long, that's
Mm.
terrifying.
Yeah.
So a lot of walking would help then. And I am a huge fan of the workout witch. She does, she has all these somatic exercises that are very gentle, they're very lazy. And it's a very safe way for me to move energy through my body without my body registering movement as danger. Okay, are you ready for kind of a wild analogy?
Okay.
Okay. Being in a narcissistic relationship, the narcissist is the predator and you are the prey. When you are the prey, you don't want to get eaten. So you freeze. You might play dead, all the things. So too much movement your brain can truly register it as you might get eaten by the predator. You've got to stay still. So the workout, which exercises are small enough, gentle enough, lazy enough that my brain does not register the movement as danger.
Okay.
So I can do that every day of the week and I'm good. If I get back into freeze mode, which still happen
Mhm.
and still healing, I can always count on that being a level of movement that feels safe to my body. Some days a walk can feel dangerous. Even though I could look around and know that I'm safe here, my body may not feel that. So I just proactively do somatic exercises on a daily basis so I can keep retraining my brain and my body together.
Wow.
And you are safe. You are safe.
That's amazing, Allie. Wow.
Oh, it's so good.
You
And
have really
it might sound
done the work.
and wild, but it's really less work
Mhm.
than not doing the work, which is to me how drinking feels.
Yeah.
Sobriety is so much less work than
Mhm.
drinking ever was.
I know. And it's so simple. Like it's so simple, it's difficult.
Yes, you nailed it.
And we think that sobriety is going to be the worst thing in the world. And oh gosh, I'm going to have to think about being sober. I'm going to have to revolve my life around not drinking. And it's like, what do you think it's like now? All you do is recover from your drinking, thinking about your next drink, thinking about the next event you have to go to. Or maybe you're at a place where you're like, "Oh, well, wherever the night goes, it goes because I am tired of managing this thing." And that is a dangerous place to be, where
It's
you just
very dangerous place to be.
don't even care.
Yeah,
So
exactly. That is so well said.
this is such great stuff. Allie, you're amazing. The work that you're doing and the what you're helping women overcome is no easy feat.
You know what, Paula? It's not. What I want women to know and what I want to show them is number one, these narcissistic relationship dynamics are going to keep you sick and stuck. So is alcohol. And when you have that combo going on for yourself, it's a very terrifying place to be. And I just cannot say, it is so much less terrifying.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of back up a little bit. I know I'm kind of going backwards here, but why are people like that? Is it because they've dealt with their own trauma?
Exactly.
And they're just carrying it over.
I think there's still a lot that they're trying to learn about it, but typically it's a response to childhood trauma, and it's a very protective mechanism. I did this certification through Caroline Strathen. I did somatic trauma informed coaching and leadership, as well as narcissistic abuse specialization certification. And she has such a compassionate lens to look through. Prior to doing this certification, I really struggled to have compassion for people who, have these traits. I can actually have compassion for them now because they experienced such extreme trauma in their own childhood
Mhm.
that this is them trying to protect themselves from pain and shame. Does it make their behavior okay? No. But when I think about my own childhood trauma and the pain that I endured and know that they too had that level of pain, that I can connect to and that I can have empathy and compassion for. I just have badass boundaries to their behavior, I didn't cause it, I can't control it, and I can't cure it. And I am going to march myself out of these dynamics as often as I can because it's a guaranteed path to pain. It's
Mm.
the same for alcohol.
Wow.
Alcohol for me was a guaranteed path to pain.
Mhm.
So living today in this life that is way less painful than what I was living before, again, was this really slow, gradual process to being able to handle. And is what I knew. It's what I was comfortable in. Today, ugh, like, oh my gosh. So for someone like you, Paula, who you're saying, I just haven't had this experience in these dynamics,
Uh-huh.
you would probably run for the hills. I mean, it's terrible. Also because you're alcohol free, and if your nervous system is regulated, you will go, oh, I think not.
Yeah, they stay away from me.
Yeah. We need more women in that space.
Yeah.
The world needs
Wow.
more women in
That's
that space.
that's crazy. That is powerful. You are doing amazing work, Allie. And
You.
just this conversation, not only with the women that you're helping right now, but just in this conversation alone that we're having today. And I want to share, hopefully there is someone out there who can resonate with what we're talking about. And I'm sure it's going to help more than one person. But with that, is there anything that you would tell someone right now? And I know you mentioned just get alcohol free, get your power back. Where can somebody really start? They're listening to us and they're like, that is me. I am dealing with this. I can't stop drinking because it's the only coping mechanism that I know. What is something small that they can do today to try to get to that place?
Ask for help. To me, that is step one. Going to someone. This is not a solo journey. I tried everything to solve my alcohol problem myself. I am a high achiever and extremely bright, and I was wildly unsuccessful. I wish I would have asked for help sooner.
Mm.
Reaching out to all it took for me was reaching out to one person I trusted, and everything moved from there. And we are two people that keep putting our names out there to say, if you aren't sure who you can reach out to, you can reach out to us.
Yeah.
DM us, send us a message on Instagram, and stop shouldering this completely by yourself. It's the tiniest step towards freedom.
Great. Thank you so much, Allie. How can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram at Sober Dream Team. And then I did finally get myself a website. I tell you what, I'm a little slow on the tech, Paula. It's soberdreamteam.com.
Oh, good. Sober dream team. Easy peasy.
You know, I can manage myself beautifully in narcissistic dynamics today. Put me on certain technology, and boy, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for help.
There
That's
we go. Take our own advice. Well, at least they had Sober Dream Team available because they didn't have Happiest Hour. So it was like Happiest Hour. So that's where the AF came in, and everybody thinks AF is as fuck, and it's not. It's alcohol free.
you know what? Could it go either way? No, just kidding.
You know what? You could be alcohol free as fuck, and that works too. Well, either way, we are available. I love being on this coaching journey with you because we can always just talk about it, cry about it, wherever we are. I'm so grateful that our paths crossed and that we have that support and the resources are
Me too.
fantastic. So again, thank you so much, Allie, for coming on. And is there anything else that you would like to add?
Oh my gosh, just if you can resonate at all with my story, just know you are so worth it. You are so worth it.
I love that. Okay, well, with that, everyone have a great day.
Thank you, Paula.